So again, this is talking about the Grants Gateway and the contract management process for grantees, and these are non-competitive contracts. So it's a little slightly different if you had been part of a competitive contract. So what happens after your grant was awarded? So the agency staff have developed contract parameters behind the scenes, and their contract details need to be updated and reviewed. That's a step we're going to be focusing on today. The updating and the details of the contract, the budget, the work plan, and attachments that you need to provide. Once that's done and it's been reviewed and everybody's happy with the way your contract looks, it's now time to send it to get signed. So it'll first be sent to you for your electronic signature in the Grants Gateway, and then it moves through a few steps of review and signature at other state agencies or departments and becomes an executed contract. So right now we're kind of in step 2 here, or just starting step 2. So there would be 2 tasks for you or your organization based on what's going on with the contract. The first thing is the one we're going to spend most of the time on today, is contract information requested. It's actually called contract info requested PM, meaning that it was sent to you from the program manager. So the program manager or contract manager has reviewed your contract and is asking for more information, or they're asking for you to fill it out, or they're requesting a change in the contract, such as the budget or work plan. Basically, this is your opportunity to fill out the details of the contract that you need to. And I'm going to go through the contract to show you what details you actually have to fill out. So that could be a back and forth. That could be your program manager sends it to you, you fill it out, you send it back to them through the gateway, and they say, no, you missed this, or you need to update this, and they can send it back to you, and you can send it back to them. But eventually, that's done, and everybody's happy with how it works, and then we go on to the signature process. As I said before, it goes through several signatures, but first of all is yours, your organization, and that's the status of grantee contract signature required. So in that case, everybody's done their reviews, they're happy with it, and everything is locked. So all the things that you've typed, all the budget information, and all the details that you've typed are locked, and it's now time to sign it. So we'll look at both of those as we go through here today. So the first thing I want to talk about is roles, user roles. The Grants Gateway is a role-based system, meaning depending on your login and the rights for that login, that determines what you can do in the system. So, for instance, when your organization was first set up, we first set up 1 or 2 people in the role of Grantee Delegated Administrator down here in the bottom left. That person can only work on what's called the document vault for pre-qualification, and they can work on your organization structure, adding or editing users in your account. So they can't actually work on an application or a contract. That's where these other roles come in. So they can create a new role, they can add a new user, or they can edit users. They can even create accounts or user accounts for themselves. So we leave it up to them to decide who at your organization gets an account and what role they use. And yes, they can have, or you can have, more than one role if it's necessary. And that's very common. So what are those other roles? We've got grantee up here in the top left. This is somebody who can work on the contract and application information. They can do all the things we're about to look at, except for one, which is signing a contract. So the people that can sign a contract are on the right here, grantee contract signatory, grantee system administrator. They both have basically the same abilities and same roles that they can do. So all the grantee abilities, they can edit contract and application information, they can save those pages, and as you can see, they can electronically sign contracts. So you must have somebody in one of these roles in your organization, or else you're never going to be able to sign the contract. So if you're a smaller organization, there's no reason to have somebody in the grantee role. If the same person is going to be the signatory, and that same person is going to be working in the contract details, you only need that one role. But maybe you have a larger organization, or you have a grant writer, or somebody that's going to be working on the contract itself. That's why you might have different roles for different people, somebody being the grantee, somebody else being the signatory or system admin who can sign the contract. So we'll see that as I log in and go through the system. So if you are a grantee delegated admin and you need to know how to create or add a new user into your account, it's in our manual, but it's also right here. So you can go to the organization members. So you'd have to go to the organization page, and there's an organization members, and then there's add members and new member. And in this case, a form will come up, like you can see on the bottom here, that will ask you to fill out the person's name, email, title, and then select which role they're going to be assigned to. And when you do that and you hit, there's a button called Save and Assign, and that person will then get a new account. They'll get 2 emails. One is a new username and one is a new password or temporary password. They log in with that username and temporary password, they change the password, and they're good to go. So yes, again, it's perfectly acceptable for one person to have more than one account, more than one role, and you can use the same email address if you want. You can even sync up your passwords if you want, that's no problem. But you do need to have that discrete role of grantee contract signatory or grantee system administrator if you're going to work on a contract and sign the contract. So I kind of repeat that because that's something that we hear very often at our help desk. People will call and say they can't work on their contract. And in fact, I have a slide about that in a few minutes. So this is really not too applicable to most of you on this call. Tasks. You probably won't have this as a task. A task is more appropriate in a competitive application, or more prevalent, I should say, in a competitive application. Unless somebody went and picked your name, you're probably not going to have a task. The task would be that status I showed you before, contract information requested. So I'm actually going to skip this because you need to know a way to find your contract if you don't have it as a task. And the way to do that is to search for contracts up here in the top middle there. You might see the underline that I did there. So when you log in, it says here, welcome Jeff, I'm in the grantee role. And I can click on the word contracts to search for it. I can also click on applications because applications is actually the unique ID number that the system uses. So you can find it under applications, contracts, and tasks. The search fields look pretty similar for all of them. And how I mentioned on that previous page, or I just kind of glossed over, if you did have this contract as a task, it would be on the home page and you can just click on this open task button and get to it. For the majority of you, you're not going to have it as a task, so you would click on contracts again up in the top here. And you just fill out the parameters to search, or you can just leave it blank and hit the search button down below. So if you left it blank, it would search and find every single contract your organization has. But if you only have a handful, that's not a big deal. If you have 100 of them, you might want to clean up the search results, and in that case, you could type in FSS if you want in the ID, or maybe the contract number, something like that. All right, so you're going to have to search for the contract, and that's what I'll do, and we'll work in one when I get to the system. So this is one of the frequently asked questions that we get at the help desk. People say, why can't I save contract information? I've logged in, I've gone to my contract, and I try to fill out something in the budget or the work plan, but there's no save button. And there's 2 reasons why that will happen. One is you're logged in under the wrong role. So it's in the right status, but you're not the right type of user. Maybe you're a grantee delegated admin. So again, only the users with these accounts, grantee, grantee contract signatory, or grantee system administrator, can actually access and work in a contract and save their changes. So reason number 2 would be the contract is not yet in the right status. So we're telling you this information right now, but I know none of your contracts are ready to go yet. So if you were to log in later today in the right role and try to access your contract and do the things I'm about to show you, it won't work because you don't have it in the right status. So the status, remember, needs to be in contract info requested PM, which means the program manager has sent it to you requesting you to fill out information for your contract. So if it's not in that status yet, you can't edit it. And if you've edited it and you've then moved it forward to the next status, you still can't work on it because it's no longer in that status. Okay, and then the one last thing I want to show, it's really not that important, but it's there on the home page, so I just want to point it out. It's called the period schedule report. If you're wondering where your contract is in the process of getting it approved, you can always look at this. This is a report on the home page, and it'll show you the different statuses that the contract needs to go through and where it is and how many days it's been at that status. So it's separated into 2 sections, the contract development section and then the signature or approval section. And you can see how many days were scheduled, how many days it actually took, and how many days on that schedule are actually remaining. And it'll tally it up on the bottom here. So not super important, but if you were just wondering and you looked at the status and you didn't know what it meant or where it is in the process, you could look at this report to see that. So I'll point that out when we get into the gateway. And you're going to need to log into the Grants Gateway. So the Grants Gateway is grantsgateway.ny.gov. You can see the address up here. But I'm going to go into a test system that we have. But just to show you kind of the layout of the gateway, you may be familiar with it. You might know about the portal. So the Grant Opportunity Portal is nothing where you have to log in. This is just to see what's out there, what grant opportunities are out there. So you could browse or search for grant opportunities. You can sign up to be notified for new ones. Or if you really need to get started, you have to register. Most of your organizations, I assume all of them, have already done that. Otherwise, you wouldn't be awarded a contract. So don't worry about the Grant Opportunity Portal as far as this goes, because of course you already have a contract. All right, so you'd go to the login page, you type in your username and your password. If you forgot your password or you've been locked out, you can click on this Forgot Password. It just asks you for your login ID and your email address. And then you click this Reset My Password. In a couple seconds, you'll get a new password. You log in and you can change it. All right, so I'm going to go to our test site here and log in as a test user. You can see it looks just like the Grants Gateway. Again, you would be going to grantsgateway.ny.gov. So I click on the login, and my name is Barbara Signatory. Her last name should tip you off, but the role that she's going to be in is a grantee contract signatory. So you should remember from that PowerPoint that that means she can not only work on the contract, but also sign the contract. So she does not have a task. You can see on our home page, there's View Available Opportunities if you want to search for a new grant to apply to. Your inbox, which you can ignore, that is basically a duplicate of any emails you might have received from the system. And then some people would have My Tasks on the bottom. She doesn't have one. So how does she find her contract? She goes up here to Contracts and searches. So just to show you the layout of the gateway here, I refer to this top kind of gray bar as the search bar, because you can search in the portal, you can search for applications, contracts, any payments you might have in the system, progress reports, which is something I don't think is being used with these contracts, and then tasks, as I mentioned before. If you or somebody else in your organization had a task or you wanted to see what task they had, you could do that. So the gray bar is for searching. The black bar is kind of reference and maintenance, so you can see there's a link to some training materials. This is your organization page. So remember I showed you before how to get to adding a new user. If you're the delegated admin, they would start here on organizations. I happen to have two organizations. They would then go to organization members. And because I'm not an admin, I can't do this, but they would have that new member and add member button, or add member and new member. So they'd go through that to add the new members. All right, so that was the organization button here. Profile is your personal profile where you changed your password, and then log out would obviously log you out. The blue bar I refer to as the action bar because on there you'll see the save button and there'll be an add button as we go through. There's nothing on this page to save right now. That's why there's no save button. The only thing we see here is this show or hide help. All right, so Barbara wants to find her contract, and you would go here to contracts and search for it. So it'll remember the last thing you searched for. If I searched on blank, I think we've got a handful of dummy contracts in this. And when I say blank, I mean you haven't typed anything in these fields here. So she's got, 7 or 8 test contracts. So let's say I want to clean that up a little. Maybe I know my contract number is 365. I can type in here 00365, or I can just type 365. All these search fields allow for incomplete lines or incomplete entries. So if I search for 365, this is the only contract in my organization that has the numbers 365 in it. I could have searched for FSS or the actual name of it, and you can see some of these other options as well. Okay, so here's my application or my contract. You can see I can click on it under application number. So there's the application number, which is a unique ID for every application/contract. My contract number, it's a multi-year contract for my organization called Sample Organization. It's 1/1/2020 to 12/31/24. This is just the first year, which is 1/1/2020 to 12/31/2020. It's in that status that we want to be able to work on it. Contract info requested, and it's for $250,000. All right, so obviously that's the one we want to talk about. So I will click on it. I'll click on application number. So we are now on the application or the contract main page. And from here, we can access all the options in the contract. Most of that will be here under Forms menu. But I mentioned that period schedule report before. That's down here. So the contract main page actually is, you get there the first time you click on it, and if you ever click on this menu button, it brings you back to this kind of main menu or main page for the contract. So on here is where you can get that period schedule report. If I click on it, it's going to be a PDF. And I'll zoom in on it a little bit. And as you can see, here's those days that we talked about. I just did it today. So obviously all my actual days that I've taken will be 0. So it went from program manager review, and now it's at contract info requested. So that's the period schedule report. Okay, so again, I'm on the contract main page. You can see the other green buttons here. Forms menu, that's where we're going to be doing our work. Status changes, eventually we need to submit it back to OPWDD, and we can do that right here under Apply Status. Management tools, there's nothing you need to look at here. And progress reports and related documents, same thing, you can ignore that. So let's look at our Forms menu. You'll notice I can hover on it and get some information, but it's a lot easier if you just click on the words Forms menu, and now you see the whole menu. So it's a menu of forms. These are all the forms you need to either look at or fill out for us. So the first page here, the first section is contract document properties. You don't have to worry about that, but just realize these are the documents that make up your contract. So if I click on it, you can see that there's an A1. That's the program-specific terms and conditions, and I'll look at that quickly when we look at our contract as a whole. And then the contract also includes the budget, the work plan, and the payment and reporting schedule. And on the bottom would be additional contract documents. Now, you're not adding them here, but the documents that you provide for your budget and your work plan will be attached here by your program manager at your regional office, and you'll see them appear here as it goes through the processes. But right now, again, Forms menu, contract document properties is nothing for you to do anything with, just to look at. And the same thing applies for these next 3 sections. Print application, well, you didn't apply, so there is no application. Full version of RFP, there is no RFP, so don't worry about that. Application versions, you never submitted an application. This is a non-competitive, so don't worry about that. So the first section you have to worry about is here, program information. And as you can see, there's a red hand here. That stop sign or that red hand is saying you need to do something on that page. Now that doesn't mean only the pages with the red hand are pages you have to look at. It's just meaning this is a page that's going to give you an error unless you take care of it. So I have the error here, and I have it down here for expenditure summary. Because what that error is, and we'll see in a few minutes, is I was awarded $250,000, yet my budget adds up to 0, because of course I haven't touched it yet. Okay, so we'll first go to contract information. And all this is asking is, on the paper contract or the PDF contract, there are 3 addresses associated with your organization: the primary mailing address, the contract payment address, and the contract mailing address. We just want to make sure these are right because you might have a drop-down of several different addresses. Now you can see I don't. My drop-down shows nothing, but I've seen organizations with 5, 10, 15, many different addresses. So make sure that what's on this page is what you want to show on page 1 of the contract, the paper contract. So just looking at it is not enough. You have to hit save, as the error says. Please review and save this page. And once I hit save, that error will go away. Okay, so now information has been saved. If I go back to the Forms menu, that error is gone right here, and I can move on to the next section. Project site addresses is actually not something that's going to end up in the contract, but you do need to fill it out. And this is just basically, where is your organization or where's your program run out of? So, it might be your main office or whatever. So I'll just call this main office And now you can see there's these regional councils, and you don't have to worry about that. You can leave that blank. And there's agency-specific region, and you do have to select one of these regions here. So in my case, I filled out Albany, so I'll pick Capital District, and I'll hit Save. Okay, so I've taken care of that page. So you can see I'm just going in order. So we did contract information, we did the address. Now there's program-specific questions. So there are questions, this is usually for competitive grant applications where applicants have to answer a whole bunch of different questions. In this case, there's two things you have to provide, a project title and are you pre-qualified. So for the project title, we want you to just use the name of the grant opportunity, which is Family Support Services FY for fiscal year 2020. And then, is your organization currently pre-qualified in the grants gateway? So it's a yes, no, or NA. So yes means you've checked and it's a yes. No, well, you shouldn't go forward or we're not going to let you sign the contract if it is a no. And then not applicable would be for governmental entities. So I'm going to pick yes, but I'm going to show you after I do that, how do I know that? Okay, so I hit yes, I saved it. Now if I click this details button here, you can see it toggles open and close. I can see my organization, a link to the organization there. And remember before in the black bar, I could click on that and get to my organization as well. So either way, we'll get you to your organization and allow you to go to the last tab here. You can see these purple links. They may be blue for you if you've never visited them before. And click on Document Vault. And I can see right up here in the top, my Document Vault is available. That's not pre-qualified. So this is one that I don't maintain. It's a test system. Yours should say Document Vault pre-qualified, Document Vault pre-qualified in review, any status that has the word pre-qualified in it. So you're not in trouble if you're not pre-qualified, and that's kind of beyond the scope of this webinar, but you do have to make sure that you get pre-qualified before you are ready to sign the contract. So if you do have questions about that and your organization is not pre-qualified and you think it should be, contact your program manager, or you can feel free to call the Grants Gateway Help Desk as well. All right, so I got out of my contract. When I clicked on my organization information, I'm no longer in the contract. Well, that's fine. I can still go up here to Contracts, and it remembers the search that you recently did. So I'll hit Search. And I can scroll down to the bottom, find that contract again, click on the number, and I can now go back to the Forms menu and continue what we were working on. All right, so I did answer that program-specific questions. Now, the next thing is the budget. So you have, you're going to be working with your program manager at your regional office to fine-tune the budget and the work plan and get all of that information that we need. There may be some back and forth with emails or calls, but eventually you're going to have a finalized budget and a finalized work plan that you can provide here. You're not going to be hand entering your budget into the gateway though. So it's pretty simple in the gateway. All you're going to do is go into Other Expenses Detail, because we're going to fill it into the section called Other. And you're basically just going to type the amount that your contract is worth. So remember, mine was worth $250,000. So it's asking you for the type and justification, and we're just going to use, we're using here, the name of your project, and then see attachment E for net deficit budget detail. So the name of, the name of my project, dash C, attachment E for net okay, and I can do that for both the title or description and justification as well. So obviously you're not going to write the words name of my project, you're going to have your project name there. But attachment E is where it will be attached. So remember, I was awarded, in this case, $250,000, so that's what I'm going to fill out. And I'll hit Save. So we're just waiting, and I should point this out. When you see the spinning icon here in the top of your browser, you need to wait. So the system is processing, and then you wait until What just happened, it refreshes the screen, and you know that it's been saved, and you get that alert that says the information has been saved. So there are kind of negative effects if someone hits the back button or something while the screen is processing. We really do prefer that you use Internet Explorer. We know it's outdated, and we're actually working to update compatibility. It's not that it's not compatible with other browsers, but there actually is one part of the work plan that doesn't work with the other browsers, and things are just kind of generally designed to work better with IE. So IE 11, if you can. The other browsers won't prevent you from doing any work, but it might get a little messy in some places. All right, so I saved that, the $250,000 here, and I'm going to go look at the Forms menu. And you can see that error that was in the expenditure summary is gone. So if I'm even $1 off, if I went back to other expenses detail, and for some reason I typed $250,000, and if I'm even a cent off actually, but I did $1 here, that error will come back. Right, so if I go now to the Forms menu and expenditure summary, you see the error. And that's because the grant funds total does not match the current period total. So the amount I said is in my grant funds is $250,001, $250 and $1, and my period total, or what I was awarded, is only the $250. So I'll fix that, and we'll be good to go. Somebody's asking, can they get a copy of the PowerPoint? Yes, that's no problem. We'll make sure we send that out. Okay, so it has saved that, and we're happy with our budget. That was very simple. Okay, so we did our budget. That's right here, no errors. And now we have the work plan. So the work plan consists of two sections, the overview form and the work plan properties. Okay, so the overview form is text-based. It's just two big text boxes. So first of all is the period. What is this? The work plan is for what period? And remember, your contracts are for the start of the year. So mine's going to be 1/1/2020 to 12/31/2020. And then there's text here. You can see it allows up to $50,000 for project summary and $4,000 for organizational capacity. But you're not going to go that far because your attachment F that you're going to provide through the gateway or via your program manager will be attached. So all you have to do is say, please see okay, please see attachment F for detailed work plan overview. That's where all your details will be. And you can actually just copy that here as well in organizational capacity, even though it's not the work plan overview. Organizational capacity does not show up on the contract, and it's not something we really need you to provide here. We just need some text in this field. So you could type NA if you want, but it was easy enough for me just to copy and paste the same thing to the bottom. Okay, so we've taken care of that. That's pretty simple. You know, obviously a lot of your work is done behind the scenes or offline in the gateway with your work plan and your budget. So let's go to the next page in the Forms menu, which is Work Plan Properties. So I can click on that, and you can see everything is grayed out, so there's nothing that we can do in it. This has already been filled out for you, and it does refer to attachment F, that work plan summary that we just talked about. So you don't have to worry about anything here, and we'll go back to, you can either go to main menu or Forms menu. So I clicked on Forms menu, and I'm back in the Forms menu. Okay, so if we go through the system, we've done the budget, the work plan, and now we have this pre-submission uploads. So this is 3 attachments, but you're only required to do 2 of them. And you can see, first one is the workers' compensation document, your certificate of workers' compensation, and the second one is disability benefits insurance. And the third one is the vendor responsibility questionnaire. So this is something that everybody has to do at some point during the contracting phase. And if you have done it online, you don't have to do it here. So there's the vendor rep system. if you have done it there, you don't have to attach it here. But you do have to provide those 2 certificates. I don't have one for my fake organization here, but I'm going to attach something anyway. And the red asterisk would tell me I have to. So you know what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to put this sample attachment, and I'm going to forget to do this last one because I want to show you what happens later when we try to submit this and we didn't do one of the required fields. So I hit browse, I found my attachment, I attached it, but it says, wait a minute, you didn't attach the certificate of disability benefits. So that's of course because I didn't, and there's a red asterisk here, which means I should have. But I'll ignore that for now. Okay, so you will have been provided your a template for your budget, the net deficit budget, and your work plan from your program manager at your regional office. You'll be working on that, filling that out. And once you're done with that, we need that in the gateway. So it's not going to be typed in any of the fields you saw. You're going to add it here to the Grantee document folder. So you can see the error because I didn't save that, provide that second attachment here. But let's ignore that and skip to the Grantee document folder. And you're going to upload your budget and your detailed work plan. So give it a name. And I don't think we have any guidance on the naming of it, so we'll just call this FY 2020 budget. And I'll go find some attachment. You would obviously find the real attachment. You can type in comments if you want, but I'm not, and I'll hit save. So just realize this is not going to automatically make it part of your contract. It's now making it something that is available to your program manager that will be saved in here kind of forever, but your program manager decides to put it into the contract. All right, so that was easy enough. I could click on View File to see what I uploaded. All right, so then I'm going to click on the Add button because I do have a second option, a second item to upload. So I had already filled out the one, I hit Save. If I click Add, I'm going to do now the detailed work plan. And I'll hit Browse and find that. Okay, so I now have 2 attachments and I can toggle between them with this drop down. So I can go back to 2020 budget, hit go, and you can see I could view the file that I attached. If the mistake, you can see I can't overwrite it. I just have to hit click delete, and it's going to say, are you sure you want to delete this? I'm not going to. But if you did, now you would only have 1 item left, and you can go and re-add. Maybe you had adjusted your budget or something like that. All right, so back to the Forms menu. So on the bottom here, there's contract versions, contract preview, and notes. So notes would be a way to communicate kind of and have a history between you and your program manager. A lot of people don't use it. I wouldn't bother with it unless your program manager told you to do something. But if you did, if you type something in here and hit save, it's just kind of a note that's now saved kind of forever to be tied with your contract. All right, so back to the Forms menu. In that last section, though, I can go to contract versions, which will be blank right now, so we'll look at that later, or contract preview. So contract preview will let me see what my contract would look like right now. Now, I don't see a need to do it right now because your attachments aren't in it, and there's really no details. But if you wanted to, you just click on contract preview, and the system will take maybe a minute or so. What it's doing is it's building a contract kind of on the fly right now with all the information you've provided. So if my budget was still off by $1, it would show that. If I didn't do the program specific questions page where it has the title of my project, it would show no title. But right now, I can click on open and I can see the contract. So there's no point in going through this right now because it's blank, or it's mostly blank. I'll look at it when we get into the signature process. Okay, so we know that I have this error here, but let's pretend we don't know it. I'm going to try to send it back to my program manager. And that's done up here under status changes, contract information submitted. So I click on the apply status button and I get an error that says certificate of disability benefits document requires an upload. So that's good. I knew we were going to get that. You can just click on it. It'll bring you right to the page that has the error. And I can go down here and attach my certificate. Oops, wrong one. This one. And hit save. And where we have the error now, once it refreshes, that'll be gone. Now I can go to status changes and submit it back to my program manager. So you may want to give them a call or an email just to let them know you've submitted it. But they'll be checking, I'm assuming, on a regular basis, so they'll know once your contract information has been submitted. So now, if I was to click on details, or if I was to search for my contract, I can see it's now in the status of Program Manager Review. And I'm going to log back into the gateway as a signatory role. So remember before we were in signatory, but I could have been in the grantee role. But now, if I'm going to sign the contract, I must be in either a signatory role or a grantee system administrator role, which basically does the same thing. So this is Barbara, signatory again, and she logs in. Oops, I had to change her password. Okay, and again, she can search for the contract, go to contracts. It remembers the last thing you searched for. You can use some of the other criteria if you would like. I hit search. I find it. Look at the results at the bottom here. I find it. And I'm in the contract. So it's in the status of grantee contract signature required. And I told you before, things are locked now. So if I tried to go in and change something I had already changed, for instance, my address, you can see there's no save button here. So it doesn't allow you to make any changes because, of course, it's now locked to get signed. So how do I sign it? All you do is change the status to grantee contract signature complete. Now, before you do, you probably want to preview your contract or look at your contract, and that's right here under contract versions. So remember before, I did a preview looking at contract preview, but now that it's actually gone for signature, there'll be something here under contract version. And you can see here under the unsigned contract version, there's a link to a PDF. I'm not going to bother looking at that now because we'll look at one once we sign it. So you should click on this link and go through your contract. I'll just be doing that in a minute. All right, so if you're ready to sign it, let's say you have gone through it, you've looked at your contract, everything looks good to you, you want to sign it, it's simply go to status changes and grantee contract signature complete. You apply that status. You now have to agree to this agreement, basically saying I'm allowed to sign on behalf of my organization, I haven't given my password away, that kind of thing. And I click on I agree. So we wait a few minutes, or wait a minute. What it's doing now is applying an electronic signature to that contract, and we'll see that when we look at the contract versions. All right, so now that's done. I've now signed my contract, and if I look at details, it's now at another status called contract package validation. That's with my contract manager, and they can handle it from there. They're going to go send it to the different organizations or people that need to sign it and review it. But let's take a look at that contract now. I want to show you the last thing here is a breakdown of what a contract looks like. So remember, I could have done a preview, and you should have, before you signed it, gone to contract versions and clicked on this unsigned version. Well, now that I've signed it, let's click on the grantee signed version here. All right, so I'm now looking at a contract. You can see this one happens to be 46 pages. Yours will be longer, and I'll show you why. Page 1 is just the cover page. You can see that contract number. Remember, I was searching for 365. Well, there it is. We know it's a multi-year agreement. This is just for year 1, but it's going to show how much we're getting each additional year. It's a new contract, and this is just my fake vendor ID name, my fake organization name. Remember, I gave it the project name. So if we went back to the gateway, and if you remember here under Forms menu and program-specific questions, we filled out the name here, the project title. That's what shows here on your contract. So if there's a mistake or somebody says you need to change it, that's where you change it, back in the gateway, back here under program-specific questions. So back to my PDF. I've got contractor information here, your vendor ID. Remember the addresses we selected. So I selected 110 State Street. It's the same for those 3 addresses, so it just puts a checkbox on them. If they weren't the same, there'd be a different address under each one of these, or under 2 of them, or so on. I'm a not-for-profit. I would check to make sure your charity's registration number is here. You can see mine is blank, but you should have one if you're a not-for-profit. Next page is the term and dollar amounts. So remember that it's a 5-year from 2020 to 2024. It's 1.381 million because it's 250,000 and there's a 5% increase each year. So that's where that comes from, and that's where year 1 shows as 250,000. So those numbers may be adjusted as we go through year to year, but right now this is what it stands at, and this is what we're going to be asking the State Comptroller's Office to approve. Page 3 is kind of a table of contents. So the attachment A1 will be next after the state terms and conditions, and then your budget. And notice it says expenditure-based budget. Remember, we're a net deficit budget, but the system, we're using it a little differently right here. So that's why B4 net deficit budget is not attached, or is not checked here, but you know that we will have it attached. Next is the work plan, the payment reporting schedule, and then those 2 attachments we just talked about. That's deficit budget and a detailed work plan. So page 4 is the signature page. This is showing what you signed, or what you approved to, or what you agreed to, I should say. The name of your organization, person's name that signed it, their role, and their title, or their title and their the date that they signed it. So obviously there's no signature, like a cursive signature or something like that, but this is behind the scenes. This is a secure website. Obviously, you've logged in with a secure ID and you were verified as the right user. Eventually, a representative from the state agency, from OPWDD, will sign it. Somebody from the Attorney General's office will sign it, and the state controllers. And once you have all those signatures, then it's a complete executed contract ready for you to actually do the work on it. The next few pages, 25 pages, is the state terms and conditions. So that starts on page 5, and I'm going to now skip to page 30. You shouldn't. You should know what you're getting into, but you'll read those terms and conditions if you haven't already. Next, on page 30, is the attachment A1. That's the program, the FSS program terms and conditions. So again, something you should be reading and understand and know what you're signing. So you can see this is a few pages here. I'm going to skip through it. Next, it brings me to the budget. Now remember, this is not a detailed budget. This is just the one line where I said we had $250,000 in the category of other. So there's the $250,000. It shows travel blank. For some reason, it just shows that, but the one we care about here is attachment E here under other for $250,000. All right, so that's all we did in the budget. Next is the work plan. Same deal. We have the reference to attachment F. Next is the work plan detail. You might remember in the gateway, these were all grayed out for us, so we couldn't make any changes. It's saying, see attachment F. So we'll do that. Next is attachment D. This is the payment and reporting schedule. It talks about your advance. So in this paragraph here, you can request an advance of up to 25%. So anytime you see a paragraph with blanks or tables that are blank, they don't apply to you. The one that does apply is right here in A1. Okay, on B, it talks about how claims are made. They are under a quarterly reimbursement, meaning every quarter, within 30 days, you're expected to submit your claim. There's no special dates for claims, so that's why this table is blank. There are reports that are due. You'll talk to your program manager about this when the time is necessary. There's a narrative qualitative report and an expenditure report and the CFR consolidated fiscal report. So they have dates. This is due 30 days after the end of the quarter. This is due 30 days, and this is due on an annual basis. So you'll talk to your program manager about that. Okay, if there are any other reports, they'd show here, but there aren't any. That's this last page here. And we did have some special payment and reporting provisions that I thought were in last year. Oh, here they are. So they appear on this next page. So just talking about the advances and payments and details of that. So the reason it flowed to the next page is just because there was too much information to fit on this one, so it made it its own next page. Okay, now the last thing we get to are the two attachments. Remember, attachment E and attachment F. Now all I did was put this bogus sample attachment PDF here. You would of course have a real document. So this would be, first of all, my real budget. This would span several pages, I imagine. And then the next attachment here would be my real work plan, which again would span several pages. So that's what the contract looks like. That's how the breakdown of all the pages works. And that's really all I have. So again, there's two statuses. You'll be working in contract info requested, where you're filling out the budget and details in the Grants Gateway Forms menu. And then there's actually signing it. I believe the majority of your work will be done kind of offline from the Gateway, working on the budget, working on the work plan, working with your program manager. But of course, you certainly have to do these tasks that we just saw in the Gateway.